You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the globe to bring you the latest developments in medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. It's time for the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville. Now, here's your host, Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Tuesday, October 31st, 2017, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Happy Halloween, everyone. I hope you're going to have a great evening tonight. I've done all my costuming. No costume for today. We're just going to get headlong into the cannabis news. It's an international day today. We've got some headlines from Germany, from Canada to get to. Also coming up on the show, a little bit of a talk about Latin America with our guest in A Sensible Future, our segment for students for sensible drug policy. We speak with a senior student at UC Berkeley. His name's Aaron Cobian, and he'll talk a little bit about his work at SSDP and how it intersects with the work of All of Us or None, Ban the Box, mass incarceration, and those different elements of the war on people. So that's coming up in our Sensible Future segment. Also, we've got our news segment that we're doing right after the cannabis headline news called What in the News, where I get to riff on what's been going on in the news stories like I used to with Cannabis Carry back in the day. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up. Also, we've got time for a radical rant at the end of the program today, where great reporting in the Phoenix New Times. And here in Portland, Oregon, we've got these billboards all over the place for weed maps. I know you've probably seen them in California. I know I've seen them in Seattle. They're in Denver. They're in Lansing, Michigan. Well, they're in Arizona as well. And the prohibitionists down there are not too happy about it. So we're going to take a look at that controversy in the radical rant. Also want to remind you that coming up on Friday, we've got a very special extended interview in the cannabis community chat with cannabis comedian and movie star and TV actor. You know him, you love him, you can't get enough of him. Doug Benson will be on the program on Friday. That's coming to you courtesy of the International Cannabis Business Conference, which is taking place in Kauai, Hawaii, December 1st through the 3rd. Check out internationalcbc.com for more information. Had a great chat with Doug Benson about how cannabis comedy has changed. What's it like being a 420 comedian now that it's legal in a lot of the places where you're doing comedy? I mean, it's no longer much of a shock value to being 420 friendly. We'll get to that later, but first, let's get to the news.
This is your Cannabis Headline News. Brought to you by MarijuanaMoment.net, the complete source for all your marijuana news in one morning newsletter from Marijuana Majority Founder Tom Angel. Subscribe today for free at MarijuanaMoment.net.
This is your Cannabis Headline News for Tuesday, October 31st, 2017. I'm Russ Belville. Members of a potential German coalition government, including the party of Chancellor Angela Merkel, are nearing an agreement on a deal to legalize marijuana, reports Marijuana Moment. Merkel's Christian Democratic Union and its ally, the Christian Social Union, together got the most votes in September's election, but they also lost seats and don't have a clear majority. That means they need the support of other parties to govern. The Conservative Alliance is now in talks with Free Democrats and Greens to form a governing agreement, and as part of those negotiations are nearing completion of a deal to legalize marijuana and have it legally distributed through pharmacies, the German newspaper Stuttgarter Zeitung is reporting. Members of the so-called Jamaica Coalition, because the colors of the involved parties are reminiscent of those on the Caribbean nation's flag, are expected to formalize a marijuana policy agreement toward the tail end of talks after other issues are settled. Conservative health critic Marilyn Gladu has put forth several motions to amend Bill C-45, the Canadian marijuana legalization bill, as it reaches report stage in the House. One of the motions includes an amendment that would remove the ability for Canadians 18 years and older to grow up to 4 cannabis plants in their residence, says Lyft News. The proposed amendment would remove 18 lines from the section of the Cannabis Act that allows for home cultivation of up to 4 cannabis plants for personal use. Several of the other proposed amendments deal with other aspects of removing wording referring to this section. The conservatives have been highly critical of all aspects of the Cannabis Act, but homegrown cannabis has been a major point of contention for several party members through the legislative process. Rob Nicholson, the party's justice critic, has made numerous speeches in the House referring to the danger of homegrown cannabis being more accessible to kids, and Gladue has referred to kids using toasters to consume this homegrown kitchen cannabis. The majority leader of the Virginia Senate said Monday he plans to introduce legislation next year that would decriminalize marijuana possession for first-time offenders, according to a story in the Virginian Pilot. The change would save thousands of people from the threat of criminal records and jail time. More than 112,000 people were arrested on first-offense marijuana charges from 2007 to 2016, a statewide review found. Senator Tommy Norment's comments came as the State Crime Commission heard the results of a study and listened to dozens of speakers on both sides of the issue. Norment said his bill, which is being drafted, would make first-time marijuana possession a civil offense punishable by a fine, mandatory education, and a driver's license suspension. Subsequent offenses would remain crimes punishable by jail time. Norment, a Republican from James City County, said he does not support the full legalization of marijuana. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie underscored the nation's opioid crisis in Indianapolis Monday, days before a White House commission Christie leads is poised to release its final report and list of recommendations to President Trump and Congress, reports Indianapolis's Fox 59. But Christie won't likely be recommending the legalization of marijuana, which has been shown in studies to reduce opiate mortality rates. When it comes to marijuana, Christie believes legalization would make people more likely to get hooked on other drugs, saying, quote, "Marijuana legalization will lead to more drug use, not less drug use, will lead to more death, not less death, and the National Institute of Drug Abuse has proven it. There is no reason, if I told you today, that anything would make your child 2.5 times more likely to be addicted to opioids, you would be getting them as far away from it as you possibly could." End quote. Conservative gadfly Ed Klein claims in his new book that former President Barack Obama is smoking marijuana again, legally this time, in his residence in Washington, D.C. Quote, "Barack sees himself as sort of a hipster ex-president, a cool guy," said the friend who was interviewed for the new book, All Out War, the plot to destroy Trump. And, quote, "He wants to go back in terms of fashion and style to his pot-smoking days as a member of the Choom Gang at school in Hawaii. He gets the weed from friends who visit him, and he keeps a small stash in his bedroom. He has rolling papers and hasn't forgotten how to roll a joint. Sometimes he'll smoke in his bedroom and sometimes in the backyard, but mostly he does it when he's traveling." End quote. This has been your Cannabis Headline News for Tuesday, October 31st, 2017. I'm Russ Belville.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Hi, I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. If you appreciate my full-time dedication to reporting and analyzing the news about cannabis, consider becoming a patron of the show. For just $4.20 per month, you'll help keep my live stream and podcast free while earning yourself your own private ad-free podcast link for the show, as well as links to the supporting articles and data. For a $9.99 VIP subscription, you'll get all that plus my exclusive research, data tables, and graphics. Just log on to mjaddenda.com and click the Become a Patron button today.
You're not high. You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
We need to say, as Nancy Reagan said, just say no. Don't do it. There's no excuse for this.
Okay, maybe you're a little high.
Looking for the 420 friendliest way to visit beautiful legal Potland, Oregon?
I'm Lori Duckworth, inviting you to come stay with us at Delta 9 House and Studios.
You get your own private room with queen bed and access to our high-speed Wi-Fi, premium entertainment system, and more.
We'll even cook you breakfast. Look us up on Facebook at Delta 9 House.
That's facebook.com/Delta9House. Delta 9 House is booked through Airbnb.com. City of Portland permit number 17-159855.
People should say no to drug use.
It's really, really easy.
Adding more gasoline to the fire.
Lackadaisical.
Really tough, really big, really great.
To infect and rot our nation from within.
Dangerous gateway drugs.
We don't need to be legalizing marijuana.
To build and grow a stronger, healthier, and drug-free society.
In the news.
All right, welcome back to our new segment, What in the News, where we run down the cannabis headline news and give you my take on this. And the first story we had today, the German government looking like it's going to legalize marijuana through a coalition called the Jamaica Coalition, because all the parties involved, the colors of their parties are the green and black and yellow of the Jamaican flag. Kind of a nice serendipitous sort of connection there. Jamaica legalizing weed. Sounds good. Well, this is great news, especially for our friends at the International Cannabis Business Conference. They'll be doing another conference in Berlin come April of 2018. We hope to be making it out to that one. Love to cover that. But great news happening. You know, Germany legalizing marijuana would be a similar blow in Europe to California legalizing marijuana here in the United States. I mean, Germany is the big economy there, the biggest economy in Europe. So that would be a great thing to have happen. Now, the devil's in the details, because now we're getting this other story coming out of Canada of how the conservatives there are doing everything they can to try to strip home grow away from marijuana legalization. You know, they're going to legalize marijuana in 2018, but here's the thing. And something I mentioned in the rant the other day as well is like legalization of marijuana has to include what it is we're doing with marijuana. We are currently growing marijuana. We are growing it. We are selling it. We are sharing it with one another. We're gathering together in social situations to smoke it. If you're not legalizing that at some level, then we're just falling short of what we need to be doing here. And these governments, these conservatives wanting to control cannabis, to keep it under some sort of regulatory scheme that involves only corporations or only the government, is a huge mistake. This is the new fight, folks, for marijuana legalization. The first fight was, can we get it legal? And we've proven that we can do that. Now the fight is can we grow it? And we're going to be fighting tooth and nail to make sure that home grow remains a part. And we're only talking about 4 plants here. They're going to go Oregon style and say that you can only grow 4 cannabis plants in a residence. No matter how many people are living there, right? You know, you have 4 roommates. It doesn't matter. You get 4 plants, period. And for the conservatives to come out and say this is some sort of public health issue, the kids can get at the homegrown cannabis easier. Look, when you homegrow cannabis, it's not like the kid can pick a bud off a plant and smoke it, right? For the most of the time that the plant's there, it's not in bud. So most of the time you're growing it, it's not more accessible. The time when it's budding, it still would need to be, picked and trimmed and cured, right? Like kids are going to be going to that extent, right? Now, I guess you could say after you've harvested your cannabis plants, you got these big jars just full of weed, and the kids could steal the weed from those. But they could just as easily steal the weed from you that you bought out of a container that you purchased at a store. So this is a specious argument. What it has to do with is they see the dollar signs. They're conservatives, right? They see the dollar signs. They got business interests that are tugging on their sleeves saying, hey, man, you got to make sure there's no home grow. Can't have people growing their own and forcing the price down and competing with us. Another story in the news today, Virginia looking at decriminalization. This, I think, the decrim push is going to be kind of the default level, right? Like people ask, what's the last state going to legalize, right? Who is going to be the last state and when's the last state? That's a long way off, actually, right? I get a lot of predictions and people that say, oh, within 5 years, even Earl Blumenauer, my congressman, within 5 years, it'll be legal nationwide. Well, it really depends on what you mean by legal. I think nationwide, we can get to a level where nobody gets arrested for marijuana anymore in 5 years across the country. But nationwide means we got to get to some level that Mississippi's going to get to, that Alabama's going to get to, that Texas or Kentucky or North Dakota or any of these other states, right? And yes, Texas has CBD and North Dakota has medical marijuana and some of these states have decrim. Mississippi has decrim. We can get to those levels. But legal in all 50 states at the level of, say, Oregon? Now, man, that's a long way off. Now, I'm 50 years old almost, turning 50 this next January. Will I live to see it legal in all 50 states to some level where I could travel to any state in America and walk into a pot shop and buy some? Well, yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. Also, in the news? Oh my goodness, Governor Chris Christie, this guy. I mean, I guess we got to count our blessings that he said he's not interested in the drug czar job. That's good news. But when he was asked, he's the head of this opioid commission, and we, the cannabis community, sent in over 8,000 comments to this commission. We sent in comments that said, look at this study that shows 25% fewer opioid-related deaths. Look at this study that shows that we've got fewer prescriptions, that we could save money on Medicare. The medical marijuana states are helping fight the opioid crisis. Those comments were completely ignored. Completely just right into the round file. Chris Christie is just a dyed-in-the-wool reefer-mad prohibitionist. To him, the reefer is evil. The devil's lettuce is just per se evil. And for him to say, quote, marijuana legalization will lead to more drug use, well, I guess in a semantic sense, he's right, in that if you consider marijuana a drug, once you legalize it, more adults will use it, then yeah. But on the whole, will there be more drug use? Well, if the study shows us that the states that have medical marijuana laws have 1,826 fewer opiate-related painkillers prescribed pills every year, then on the net, wouldn't we have less drug use? Even if we're having, more in the marijuana category? That marijuana legalization would lead to more death, not less death. And the National Institute of Drug Abuse has proven it. I would love to see this paper from NIDA on how marijuana use leads to death. I want to see this. These people are grasping at straws. It's like, I've got this local prohibitionist here in Oregon, and this kind of relates to the rant we'll do later, who's all upset about the billboards that say that there's fewer opiate-related deaths and less crime and so forth. And we'll talk about that in the rant, but it's the same kind of stuff that Chris Christie's smoking. And then finally, this last story in the news, President Obama smoking weed legally in his home in Washington, D.C. And Ed Klein, now you got to understand, Ed Klein's like this hatchet man, writes these hit books on Hillary Clinton and, anybody Democratic, right? So you got to take this with a grain of salt. But as political hit jobs go, I think saying that the guy who used to be president for 8 years, who is an adult man in his 50s, who lives in a district where it's perfectly legal to do so, I don't think it harms Obama's legacy at all. Klein's trying to paint this picture that Obama doesn't want to lead what he calls the Trump derangement syndrome, the fight against Trump, the resistance, that Obama's more content to sit on the sidelines and he's more content to not lead this so-called, Democratic Party so-called resistance. I think it's a bit of a reach, Ed. I think it's a bit of a reach. Because number one, Obama's always been kind of a standoffish guy, kind of a, very careful and considerate about what he's doing, right? He's not one to just jump in, make rash decisions. And number two, I think he's someone who is the polar opposite of the current resident of the Oval Office in damn near every way, in that he understands the legacy of the office of the White House, its stature, its place in history, and what it means for him as a former president to do or say anything and what impact that will have. So no, I don't see Obama, coming in and wanting to be the leader and wanting to be front and center of some sort of new movement any more than George W. Bush went front and center during Obama's years. Any more than Bill Clinton came front and center during George W. Bush's years. The former presidents, it's kind of it's an understood thing that you stay out of the way and let the current president do his gig without you stepping all over it. Now, you can make the argument these are special times, and Donald Trump is not any sort of normal president. And given how little he cares for the traditions and the standards and the unwritten rules of the White House, why should any of the former presidents? That's a judgment call for Barack to make. I'm just glad he gets to smoke some weed and think about it a little.
MFer, I want more iced tea.
Yes, folks, it's 20 after. It's back. I missed it so much, I decided to bring it back. Now that we've got What in the News, we will conclude it every day with an appropriate 4:20 break for my DNA that's still back in Idaho in the Mountain Time Zone. So smoke them if you got them. After the news, it's probably the best time. If you work in the cannabis industry, consume marijuana, or just support freedom, you need to know about breaking policy news that affects you. Marijuana Moment is the daily newsletter that helps you stay on top of all the latest and most important state, federal, and international cannabis developments. Brought to you by longtime legalization activist Tom Angel, Marijuana Moment puts a concise yet comprehensive overview of cannabis news in your inbox early every weekday morning. Wake up to Marijuana Moment and rest assured you'll be ready for the cannabis news that's driving the day. Subscribe now at marijuanamoment.net.
The Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
And yes, we will overcome addiction in America. We are going to overcome addiction in America.
Whatever you're smoking, it's not marijuana.
And now, in the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Marijuana Agenda presents this anti-drug public service announcement.
Hey, Lindsay. I wish you didn't smoke weed. You're not the same when you smoke. And I miss my friend. I'll be outside.
To combat this sort of reefer madness, listen to the Marijuana Agenda every weekday at mjagenda.com. Hi, I'm Russ Belville. Join me as I cover the Marijuana Agenda at the Oregon Marijuana Business Conference the weekend of November 18th and 19th in beautiful Ashland, Oregon. The OMBC is Oregon's biggest and longest-running conference dedicated to the cannabis industry and marijuana activism. You'll hear an extended interview with influential state Senator Floyd Przansky, a VIP reception and keynote address from the legendary Henry Rollins, and a free after-party featuring music from Hieroglyphics and Souls of Mischief. Plus, you'll get information from 40 industry exhibitor booths and be able to question members of the Oregon Liquor Control Commission regarding cannabis issues they'll be ruling on. Visit OregonMBC.com to learn more and book your tickets now. That's OregonMBC.com for the Oregon Marijuana Business Conference. We'll see you there.
This is A Sensible Future, brought to you by Students for Sensible Drug Policy at ssdp.org. Drug policy is an issue that primarily affects the young, both in terms of use and legal prosecution. SSDP believes in honest education about drugs and advocates for harm reduction policies to protect young adults and society at large. We speak with another dedicated activist from SSDP, working toward a sensible future.
Welcome to another edition of A Sensible Future, the podcast for students for sensible drug policy. Find out more at ssdp.org. I'm Russ Belville, and joining us today, we have an SSDP member from UC Berkeley in California. Go Bears! It's Aaron Cobian joining us today. Hi, Aaron.
Hey, what's up, Russ? How you doing?
Doing good. So you're a current student at UC Berkeley. What year are you?
Yeah, I'm a senior at Cal in my last semester. I'm about to graduate.
Oh, okay. And so have you been with SSDP the whole time?
Yes, I've been part of it. I've been an SSDP member since about my sophomore year, about 3 years ago. And ever since then, I've been an active member of SSDP.
So what attracted you to Students for Sensible Drug Policy?
So how my interest started with SSDP was like that. When I got into Cal, because I'm originally from Southern California, the city of Compton, and I was born and raised in Compton. And when I came to Berkeley, at first I wasn't trying to find my zone, trying to fit in with student organizations, but I didn't find a comfortable place where I felt comfortable talk about the things that I'm most interested about, which is mass incarceration and decriminalization and the war on drugs, right? And so, in my time at Berkeley, I met one of the cool homies, Froggy Vasquez, who introduced us to Students for Sensible Drug Policy. He was a former member of Students for Sensible Drug Policy back in 2007, and it was me and a couple of homies of ours who were basic Berkeley students, like smoking pot on the weekends and stuff, and then like talking about the issues on mass incarceration and the war on drugs, foreign policies that affect countries in the countries abroad, right? Since then we started organizing and talking and making this conversation legit, right? And so that's how I got involved, and also because partnering up with All of Us Are None and underground scholars at UC Berkeley, that gave us the center place for to the conversation about mass incarceration and how the war on drugs related to mass incarceration, right?
So for this activism for you is broader than just the issue of drugs. It's getting into these larger criminal justice issues that we've been talking about.
Most definitely, and that's what makes us unique and a little bit different than other Students for Sensible Drug Policy chapters from the nation. Here, Students for Sensible Drug Policy at Cal, we are committed to ending the war on drugs. But this means we ending the repressive and colonial narrative that this government and all its allies around the world have imposed on the issues of the war, issues of drugs, in order to carry out racist imperialist agenda. As a chapter, we look at the ways in which the drug war is used as a political tool to destabilize governments abroad and oppress and repress people, militarize police, and ensure stolen resources through the use of racist borders, laws, and so-called nation states.
That is so good to hear, because, being a student at Berkeley, I can imagine that, the argument and the discussion about drug policy is a pretty easy one. Berkeley's kind of known as being that sort of place that's for free speech and free ideals. So the idea that you guys are expanding into the broader criminal justice issue, especially when we're talking about people of color, Latinos, African Americans, and so forth, and this issue of the colonialism, the repression that has happened in places like Honduras and Nicaragua and these other countries due to our drug policies. So as you are embarking on graduation, how do you intend to take your activism further beyond your SSDP chapter?
Well, as I'm heading to my graduation, I'm still in my mind, I still want to be committed and continue organizing through community organizations and continue visiting SSDP at Cal to continue with the work that we've been doing. And for me, Students for Sensible Drug Policy isn't the only organization that I'm involved with that focuses on the criminal justice system. As I mentioned before, All of Us Are None, or underground scholars have been that I've been involved with, have particularly done work in the criminal justice system, from banding the box across all the UCs. And so this allows me to have a window of not of opportunity, but of where to reach out, even though I have graduated and continue with my activism.
What is your degree in?
I'm a geographer and society and environment major, double majoring.
That's excellent. Now, for some of our listeners who might not be familiar with what the Ban the Box campaign is, tell them what that means at Berkeley, Ban the Box.
So the Ban the Box is that what it started with All of Us Are None as a project to allow formerly incarcerated members who recently got out to have a second chance in applying for jobs and not being discriminated because of their criminal record. Because sometimes when we apply to jobs and they many times they ask us for a background checker and stuff, right? And like if you've been committed with felony, check this box, and that limits the person applying for a job to continue with the process, right? To the interview, and that sort of underground scholars here at Cal sort of push pressure the UCs to ban this box and give a second chance to formerly incarcerated members who are trying to get back in their legs and get an education in higher education, right? And we were able to do this back in 2016, banning all the boxes around across the UCs, and that allows formerly incarcerated members, as I mentioned, to now be able to apply and continue with the further process where they're being interviewed and not solely discriminated for their background.
Well, that's great work that you're doing with Ban the Box. And, of course, All of Us or None is another great organization. We just saw them at the Drug Policy Alliance Conference. Dorsey Nunn and all the crew out there. Glad to hear that their work is making it out to the West Coast as well. Aaron from UC Berkeley, tell us if you've got any websites or Facebook pages or email addresses you'd like to give out, if you'd like to converse more with some of our listeners, or if they're looking for some more information on the topics you've been discussing.
Yeah, you could definitely check us out on Facebook, Students for Sensible Drug Policy at Cal, and you'll find our recent posts and events that are coming up. For just to mention that this Saturday, November 4th, we're having a mini regional Pacific conference where we're gonna have universities from the Northwest Pacific come and we'll be hosting the conversation, and we'll be talking about some issues of mass incarceration, like how is mass incarceration related to the war on drugs, and trauma and healing, a harm reduction approach to the war on drugs, and other more, right? And so yeah, basically on Facebook we have our page, Students for Sensible Drug Policy at Cal, and you can check us out there and hear more about us. And most definitely, we're always updating this our website. So if you're interested, check us out, and we'll definitely keep you posted with events and upcoming meetings.
All right. Well, get involved, and remember, you don't have to be going to UC Berkeley necessarily, do you, to be able to get this info?
No, you don't. You don't have to be to get the information. You don't. And we also do work in the community, so it's always open to community members who are trying to get engaged in ending the war on drugs together.
That's fantastic, Aaron. Thanks so much for joining us here today on the Marijuana Agenda, and good luck to you in the future.
Oh, thank you. Also, can I just mention the last brief point?
Sure. Yeah.
One of our main focus here at Cal under Students for Sensible Drug Policy is to also to focus on the war on drugs through Latin American through viewing it through the Latin American perspective, and how the war on drugs and foreign policies are affecting countries in Latin America, right? And because we know that the war on drugs began right after the civil rights movement, and it's been a tool of oppression and racism, right? So in our part, we're trying to push and pressure the U.S. government in our part to continue. To dismantle this war on drugs approach that they have with law and order, and come up with an alternative. As I mentioned before, I've also been involved in other community organizations that we focus on. I don't know if you're familiar with the disappearance of the 43 students of Ayotzinapa in Mexico. We have gathered and met with some of the students, like Omar Garcia, and talked about ways of continuing pressuring the U.S. government to continue pressuring the Mexican government to continue with this investigation of the mass cases of disappearances that is happening in countries in Latin America, from Mexico to Honduras to Nicaragua to Colombia and El Salvador. And yeah, just, and keep stay updated. Check us out on Facebook, if anything, to learn more about us and the work that we do around here.
All right. Well, Aaron, thank you for that additional information. We really appreciate it. And again, good luck on all this activism that you're taking on at such a young age. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Russ.
This episode was produced as part of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville, the daily news and interview podcast covering the world of medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. MJAgenda.com.
Hi, I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. If you're a cannabis brand looking to build trust and awareness within the community, consider becoming a sponsor of this program. Your message will be seen and heard by the most dedicated followers of marijuana policy reform, who are loyal and supportive of those brands that give back to the community. Just log on to mjagenda.com and click the Become a Patron button to learn how your brand can also be featured in my live nationwide appearances. Thank you for your support.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Did you know that each day in the state of Georgia, more than 6 people are diagnosed with HIV? As a person providing life-saving services to those most at risk, I know HIV is preventable. We need more people in this fight, which is why I want you to join me this October in Atlanta for the 2017 Drug Policy Alliance Reform Conference. Join us in the fight to end the drug war. Register now at reformconference.org.
The International Cannabis Business Conference is headed to Hawaii. Get your tickets now for the year's best cannabis industry island retreat this December 1st through 3rd. Kauai Grand Hyatt hosts the 3-day ICBC, which begins with a VIP reception featuring cannabis comedian Doug Benson. The ICBC features exhibitor booths, keynote speeches, and informative panels with industry experts and regulatory officials. Then, when it's all said and done, kick back for the incredible after party with music by reggae legends Morgan Heritage. There's also a singles golf tournament you can play on Monday, sponsored by Leafly Endured Ventures. Log on to internationalcbc.com to get more information and buy your tickets now. Special discount hotel rates are in effect, so act fast. That's internationalcbc.com for the International Cannabis Business Conference. Aloha.
Total war against public enemy number one.
10 federal criminal penalties for up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
Marijuana is probably the most dangerous drug.
Legalization is just another word for surrender.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
This is not medicine. This is a Cheech and Chong show.
Encourage people to use less drugs.
I inhale. That was the point.
I think it would be a mistake to legalize.
Negative reports coming out of Colorado.
Good people don't smoke marijuana.
Radical Rant.
Today in the rant, we want to talk about Arizona and a little bit about Oregon. It mostly has to do with a story that's in the Phoenix New Times, a great piece written by, get the name here, Joseph Flaherty, and it has to do with the weed maps billboards. We got these all over Portland, and if you're living on the West Coast, Seattle, San Francisco, LA, I assume have these as well. I've heard them referred to in Michigan. I heard a news clip of someone talking about the Make Lansing High or High Lansing billboards, which I know what they're referring to. So around the country and including Arizona. And the story in the Phoenix New Times, some of the billboards say things like, they're basically black billboard, white letters. Since legalizing marijuana in 2012, Colorado has had no increase in youth marijuana usage. Neither has Washington. And then the Weed Maps logo, right? There's another one that'll say that there's states that legalized marijuana had 25% fewer opioid-related deaths. That's one that's out there as well. And there's a third that says, I have to get this one off my Twitter feed, that States which legalized marijuana experience up to a 12% reduction in theft. Weed maps, right? So the critics, which in this story is Arizonans for Responsible Drug Policy. Now, I got to understand who these people are. These are the only prohibitionists that won in 2016. During marijuana election night 2016, the only state of 9 states voting on reform that lost was Arizona, and it was 52-48. They got huge bankroll from Sheldon Adelson, the Nevada billionaire, casino magnate, and $500,000 from Arizona-based fentanyl manufacturer Insys Therapeutics. Now, we just recently told the story, I believe last week, on the founder and the top executives who were indicted for bribery and fraud for pushing these fentanyl products. Now, their spray, this sublingual fentanyl spray, was made for people suffering cancer pain, and they were bribing doctors basically allegedly to use this pain spray and prescribe it for people with just regular chronic pain, just continuing pain. Got all these people hooked on fentanyl. And they got money from the Arizona Wine and Spirits Wholesalers Association. So you got the booze industry, the opioid industry, and the gambling industry donated to these Arizonans for Responsible Drug Policy to kill marijuana legalization on the 2016 ballot in Arizona. Now, they're upset, and they're starting this call to action about these billboards. They're upset about the billboards. They say that it's false advertising. Now, there's a law in Arizona about false advertising. So the Arizona Consumer Fraud Act prohibits deceptive and false advertising in the state of Arizona. And so they are saying, quote, these claims are false, misleading, and dangerous. Their sample letter says, quote, advertising on the billboards includes claims that youth use has not increased in Colorado and Washington since legalization of recreational marijuana, claims of a decrease in opioid deaths attributable to marijuana in legal marijuana states, and how to find dispensaries and billboards urging viewers to get high. Okay, so they go about trying to debunk this. And the first one they try to debunk is the billboard saying that Colorado had no increase in youth marijuana usage, neither has Washington. Now, the source for the weed maps billboard for this claim comes from the states themselves, right? The study in Colorado is the 2015 survey from the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, most recent data that the state collects, and the data for Washington State is the 2016 Washington State Healthy Youth Survey. Now, Arizonans for Responsible Drug Policy says, that data is no good. That data is no good. You can't trust those states. Instead, we should trust the federal government's National Survey on Drug Use and Health, which says youth marijuana use increased 9.53% in Colorado and 3.18% in Washington State between 2011 and 2014. Okay. So, you know me, folks. I look shit up, and I looked this up because I have a spreadsheet that I've been keeping since 2008 of all the state-level National Survey on Drug Use and Health data. I'm looking at it right now. And it breaks down into monthly use by people aged 12 to 17. And so we can take a look at this data from 2011 to 2012, which is what they're referring to, right? Which would be the full 2-year cohort before legalization took effect, right? It was voted on in November of 2012, but it didn't take effect till the next year, right? So we can take a look at that data. What was the percentage of kids 12 to 17 that were using marijuana monthly? National Survey, Drug Use and Health. This is what they're telling me to look at. And we can compare it to the most recent data, which is the 2014-2015 National Survey. They're comparing it to 2013-2014 National Survey, right? So one might argue This is when legalization began, and it was a new fad. And before people learned lessons and regulations kicked in and so forth. That's what I'd argue. So what is the difference? So let's take a look. In the United States, the state that by far had the greatest increase, relative increase, in youth marijuana use was Indiana. No, it was not Colorado or Washington State. It was not Oregon. It was not California. It was Indiana. That's right. In 2011-2012, 6.25% of Indiana teens smoked pot. In 2014-2015, that was 8.08%. The difference between those 2% works out to a 23.93% difference, or I'm sorry, 29.32% difference. Damn near 30% more kids in Indiana are smoking pot now than they did before legalization. So I guess when Colorado and Washington legalized pot, more kids in Indiana smoked it? I don't know how that works. But instead, let's get down the list and get to Colorado, which is after, as far as states that had the greatest increase in marijuana use by teenagers since 2012. It's on the list. It's in the top 10. No, it's not. Yes, it is. It's in the top 10. How many are there? Let me look. Count. Yes, 10. It's in the top 10. Colorado is in the top 10. Where do you think Colorado lands in the top 10 of states that had the greatest increase in marijuana use by kids since 2012? Well, it's after Indiana, which is number 1, followed by Maryland, Kansas, Maine, Wyoming, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alaska, and ding, right there, number 10 in America, Colorado, where indeed, according to the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, in 2011, 10.47% of teenagers reported using marijuana monthly. And in 2014-2015, that is up to 11.13%. 10.47 to 11.13. So it went up 6% relatively since 2012. Went up 6%. That's not a good thing. We don't see more kids smoking pot. But what should be noted is that what they're trumpeting was the rise between 2011 and 2013 numbers, the 2011 to 2013, 2014 numbers, right? So the last year's data, the kids were smoking was 12.56% in Colorado. So it actually has dropped in the most recent year survey. In fact, from 2013, 2014 to 2014, 2015, they do these in 2-year groups, mind you. So most recent year to the year before that, the drop in Colorado has been 11.39%. In fact, Colorado has had the fourth biggest 1-year drop in youth marijuana use rates in the past year of all the United States. Pretty impressive, huh? It's interesting how you can juggle numbers, right? But let's go back to this, because again, Colorado went up 10.47 to 11.13. Even though it did decline in the previous year, it's still higher than it was. But you know where it's at? Colorado's youth use rate is where it's at 2 years ago. So 2012, 2013, it was at 11.16%. Now it's at 11.13%. So it's even a little lower now than the first year of legalization. It's a 0.03, right? But still a little bit lower. So that first half of the Weed Maps billboard, if you go by the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, these drug prohibitionists are technically right if that's the source you pick, rather than the state of Colorado's source. You pick this source, Colorado youth use has gone up, 10th highest increase in the nation. 10 out of 15 that increased. But what about Washington? Because we're going to play this game, right? We're going to compare 2011, 2012, prior to legalization. In Washington, we had 9.45% of the kids smoking pot monthly. Most recent data, 2014, 2015, that is 9.17. It's actually declined 8.85%. fewer kids, relatively speaking, are smoking pot in Washington now. Well, let's trumpet that. That tells us both sources in Washington state say that there are fewer kids or the same amount of kids using marijuana. The state source says the same amount of kids, relatively little change. The federal source says definitely lower by 8%. So we're going to go, and same phenomenon for Washington state as what happened in Colorado. Last year, the 2013-2014 number was 10%, 10.06, and it dropped. Oh, I'm sorry. The 8% drop is the past year drop. I was looking at the wrong column, folks. It was a 3% drop overall since legalization, 2.95%. Too many columns. Sorry about that. But again, the overall point sticks. According to this federal data, Colorado went up, but it was only the 10th worst in the country. And Washington went down. Youth use rate. Now, the other one that they want to complain about is the opiate billboard. But this is interesting because in this, now I don't know what they, if they did complain about this in the story, or if they did like back this complaint and the story in Phoenix New Times just doesn't cover it. But they did make a complaint about the opioid deaths. The states that legalized marijuana had 25% fewer opioid-related deaths. Nothing in the story that I found shows them, I mean, it shows they complained about it, but they don't show what they think the real truth is about this. They say it's false, misleading, and dangerous, but nothing in the story seems to say that why they think that's a false or misleading or dangerous claim. Because what it's been found in numerous studies now. This is not just like a one-off fluke. They're finding this reflected in the data in many different ways. Between they looked at the Medicare Part D prescribing, where they code, which pills, how many of them, how often that they're distributing. They keep track of that stuff for the government, right? In the states that had medical cannabis access, they had 1,826 fewer painkillers prescribed, and they had fewer antidepressants, anti-anxiety, all sorts of things. Right. And then another study took a look at the opiates that they find in the blood of people that died in car crashes, which is a nice random sample for the most part. Right. Randomly people get killed, although probably people with take more risks probably die proportionally greater. But still, they're finding fewer opiates in the blood of people that are in car crashes. They're also finding fewer overdoses, fewer admittance to rehab for opiate problems. And the surveys themselves, some of these questionnaires, they ask the consumers themselves, what's your use of marijuana? What's your use of opiates? And they say, hey, if I got marijuana, I can cut 2/3 of my pills. I've heard that story so many times, I can tell it myself. The opponents don't seem to be fighting that one too hard. They're just saying it's misleading, but how is it misleading? Are you saying that if people have access to marijuana, more people? Because Chris Christie tried. That's what Chris Christie tried to say, is that, well, a child who tries marijuana is 2.5 more times likely to try an opiate, which dubious statistic at best. And what it's an example is gateway drug thinking. It's a mathematical fiction. This idea, well, we take these heroin users, and 9 out of 10 of them said they tried marijuana first. And so therefore, if you crunch the numbers, the kid's more likely. No, that's not the way it works. And especially an irrelevant statistic to bring up. It's not kids that are getting hooked on the opiates. These are people, middle-aged people that are, getting prescriptions from doctors that run out, or getting pills from friends and then turning to other opiates. This is the problems with the pharmaceutical industry and our medical paradigm in this country. They want to, of course, deflect, distract, point that over at, it's got to be the weed somehow. But the truly funny part about this Phoenix New Times story is the billboard they want to put up. They're launching a new billboard. They're trying to take the same style, so it's a black billboard, white lettering, right? They got their little red Arizonans for Responsible Drug Policy logo with little Arizona, silhouette with a cactus in it, right? This one says, every 3 days, someone dies in a marijuana-related traffic death in Colorado. which, first of all, I think should say every 3 days someone is killed in a marijuana-related traffic death in Colorado. I think someone dies in one is, I don't know. Also, visually, it'd fill that little black space on the billboard better. But you know me, I'm a picky kind of critic. First of all, of course, a bogus stat. But second of all, they don't even bother to try to back it up. At the bottom of the billboard, they have the fine print, paid for by Arizonans for responsible drug policy, but no attribution of their source for this claim. Now, these weed maps billboards, even if you disagree with since legalizing marijuana in 2012, Colorado has had no increase in youth marijuana use, neither has Washington. Even if you disagree with that statement, you can look up their source because it's right there on the bottom. Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment 2015 survey, 2016 Washington State Healthy Youth Survey, Washington State Department of Health 2014 Washington State Healthy Youth Survey Data Brief, Marijuana Survey 2014. They've got their sources right there on the billboard. The prohibitionists, they don't play that. They've never felt like they've had to. And it's going to be interesting to see if we're finally to a point now where the media will call them on it. Aside from me, obviously. But if the media will call it, like, what's your source on that? Because if they have to explain what the source is, well, according to the blood draws that we take, these deaths, so the traffic deaths, right? There's people with THC in their blood that died in these car wrecks. And so over 3 days, there's 20 a week, and we do the division, and well, there you go. Every 3 days, there's one of those people with THC died in a car crash. And then you hope the media says, well, does that mean the THC caused them to wreck their car? Well, no. Does that mean the THC was at a level that was impairing to that person at that time? Does that mean the person who had THC in their system who died in the wreck was driving? Were they just a passenger in the car that got hit? And even if they were driving, were they at fault? Right? Like, I've got THC in my system pretty much always. If I'm in a car that gets T-boned in an intersection by a drunk driver and I'm killed and you find the THC in my system, yeah, I've died in a marijuana-related traffic death if marijuana-related means I died and I'm related to marijuana. It doesn't mean marijuana is related to the traffic problem. It was related to the person who died. And given that you live in a legal marijuana state, or in Arizona, one with medical marijuana, you're going to find dead people in car wrecks with THC in their system. You're going to find them wearing red scarves. You're going to find them that they ate, a burrito earlier that day. None of those things had anything to do with them getting in that wreck that day. Unless the red scarf was tied around their eyes, they were eating the burrito at the time and spilled it and wrecked a distracted driver, right? I mean, because that's the where they want to take it next, right? If you bring up the part about, well, the THC doesn't, it doesn't mean impairment and it can be detected. If you bring that stuff up, then they'll start to take on it. Well, it impairs the reaction time. You'll be slower reaction and people and the distracted the time and the lane variations will happen. And, they'll bring that kind of stuff up. Or you could be smoking a joint and you could drop it and be distracted. And well, then we're at the same level as cell phones and kids in the back seat and a dog in your lap and other things that, could kill you. If you want to say that distraction that you were being irresponsible then led to a wreck and you died means that killed you, then you can stretch the meaning of words that far. Fine. But this is what we get from the prohibitionists. And I'm getting it now from PDX Randy Lee. He has now formed some sort of group called Portland for Positive Impact with a very, professional looking graphic. Anyway, he's trying to fight the Weed Maps billboard. He's using the NSDUH survey as well. And of course, his graphic, which I will be debunking online soon, his graphic is, again, only showing the 2014 data. So I'm going to finish the graphic for him so it shows that the 2013 it went down, and in Washington State, it's the same, and what happened in Indiana. So anyway, we'll get to all that. His other tweet here, what's he got? Oh, the claim on the theft. He's got the 12% reduction in theft. So his debunk for this is to compare 2015 and 2016 data in state of Oregon. 2015, we had 20,000 larcenies, and 2016, we had 39,000 larcenies. And I'll look deeper into these numbers and see what I can find. But one of the things I do want to bring up to end this rant is the double-edged sword that we get with these type of billboards, right? And that is, should the numbers turn around, this stuff can be used against us. To me, marijuana legalization isn't a question of whether or not more kids might smoke pot. Because to me, even if more kids did smoke pot, that's not worth locking up adults over. That's not worth criminalizing adults over. That's not worth fining and punishing and coercing into treatment adults over. If we have a problem with too many kids smoking pot, that's a problem of too many kids smoking pot. We don't have this sort of policy idea with alcohol. Oh my God, youth binge drinking is up. I guess we better start arresting adult drinkers. I guess we better start fining adult drinkers. I guess we better start forcing adult drinkers into AA so that we can reduce this youth drinking. No. We start thinking about better educating the kids, having 21 drinking ages, and so forth. Of course, I'd argue for an 18 drinking age because I figure if you can go fight in a foreign land, you can put a beer in your hand or a bong in your hand, right? That's what I figure. But that's a rant for another day because, folks, we're just about out of time. Hell, we went a whole hour today. Just like the old days. Probably have a little more of that as we continue on and on here. More listeners, more sponsors, more segments, more guests. We'll ramp it back up. Thanks for your support. We appreciate it. Donate if you can at mjagenda.com. For everyone here at Delta 9, I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
Follow MJ Agenda on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and follow MJ Agenda Show on Twitter. Learn more at mjagenda.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.